DNVR lounge, as you can see here. A lot to talk about today. But first, shout out to Strava Craft Coffee. If you're feeling sleepy after watching that offensive performance from the Broncos, Strava Craft Coffee is where you should go, because not only are you going to get that nice caffeine buzz that you crave, but it's CBD infused, so you're not going to get that jitteriness. Although, maybe the Broncos could use some jitteriness in their offense. And also, if you want this game-used bat, shoot me a DM. Andres Galarraga game-used bat for sale.
I think a lot of people may want that bat right.
And the first person who wants it he wants to enter a China shop with it is Joe Flacco.
And you can't call him Sleepy Joe after what happened after the game anymore, Ryan.
I mean, honestly, it was great to see some fire from him. For the first time all season, we see Joe Flacco express emotion. Yep. It was fantastic to game plan you could imagine, as we kind of expected.
Yep.
That would always happen in any game this year. And they play on the conservative side of things. Would you say
100%.
Was there a moment in the game where they got aggressive anyway?
No, they did do it.
Yeah, a flea flicker for 17 yards.
Frustrating, and we got to 13. That's 7 more than we had last week.
And it's 7 more than they had in the first half, and they had already decided that 6 was enough in the first half.
Right, exactly.
So they go out there, and let's just get to what Joe Flacco said. I'm going to give you the whole quote here, because it's as spicy of a quote as we've had in a long time here in Denver. From Joe Flacco. I mean, here's if you give the ball back to the guys. Obviously got the field goal anyway, and he's about the first half here, I believe. Once again, we're 2-6 football team, and it just feels kind of a game. It's 3rd and 5 at the end of the game. Who cares if they have a timeout there at the end or not? Getting in field goal. Feel about a lot of the game today.
Preach, Joe. Keep preaching.
Keep preaching. But, okay, so it starts with the half. And we were sitting in here in the DNVR office, like, pounding our heads on the table. All with 2:21, I believe, was the time on the clock. Zach, 2 minutes and 21 seconds.
It's a lot of time.
And how many timeouts? 2?
I think so, yep.
We are sitting here like making jokes, like, 6 points. We're up 6-0. That's a win. Let's just get the heck out of here and get to halftime. And what happens? They end up giving the Colts the ball back with around 50 seconds?
57 seconds.
With 57, the Colts field goal.
Points. So the Colts
effectively do the thing they wanted to do.
Nope.
Which go to half.
And it was like they'd never had a plan. No, sorry. I mean plan B. Oh, no. Back to plan A. Oh, maybe B. Oh, yeah, let's just punt.
And that's what we always talk about. This should be a winning number. Let's sit on it from here on out.
And you know what happened after they got to 13? Of course, after they opened up the second half with a great touchdown drive, went 75 yards for 7, then they went punt, 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 strip sack, fumble to end the game.
Oh, God, that's even worse. So, take on what Joe had to say.
I love it. And
but let's get deeper into this.
He's 100% right. And At this point, Joe, I love how Joe Flacco emphasized it multiple times. They're 2-6. What do you play? Why are you afraid right now? If you're ever going to be aggressive, it's now. I think Joe Flacco also understands now. They're making a push for the playoffs. Now you're not. And you know what? John would have sold that. The Broncos wouldn't have traded anyone if they won this game. But now you cannot make that excuse anymore. You can't convince yourself of that. And that's what Joe's saying is,
what he's having to say, because the worst thing that can happen is you lose. You tried to do the conservative, let's just not have bad things happen approach, and what happened? You lost. At least you feel like, don't you think you could sleep a little better tonight if you said, well, we lost, but at least we weren't scared.
to win. I'd really like to not lose this.
So easy to defend. So easily.
Yep.
Hey guys, we're trying to football game. Heck, Frank. It's defensible. It's always defensible when you were just trying to win the football game.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty indefensible, especially at 2-5, now 2-6, to just be like, well, we were just doing what the numbers say or whatever. We were playing for field position.
Right.
And I told you what happened. The Colts elected to down from 2:18 to 2 minutes to hit the 2-minute. Right, snap the ball with 2 minutes and 2 seconds on the clock because the clock is already going to stop at the 2-minute warning, and so even if you're incomplete, it's not giving them a free stoppage. It's just whatever. It's what was going to happen anyway. It's 1:55 on the clock. It goes to the 2-minute warning. But I'm so with Joe in the fact that, like, what are we doing here?
And then he adds in this at the very end. He says, that's kind of how I feel about a lot of the game today. So Joe's not just calling out one poor play call. He's not just bad disagrees with about
Are the ones that are going to go viral. But
your tweet.
Yeah. The comments from the locker room were all very uniform. Comment that really opened my eyes was
what?
Cortland Sutton talking about Rock Yassin said, "Bro couldn't guard me."
Mm-hmm.
How many targets did Cortland Sutton? The game was he probably ended up with like 120. Is that a fair number you would come up with? How in the world, if he feels like, I don't even care if it's true. If he feels that way, keep going back to him. Because and he felt like he couldn't be covered. And again, he was probably right. Because every time they threw the ball that way, something good happened. The only couple times that it didn't were drops. Yep. He had 2 drops.
Or a second down, or it was the first or second play of the drive that the Broncos had, and Phil goes think runs into the back of a defender. And Phil wasn't tired, and I understand that the Broncos are going to split the carries between Royce and Phil. But come on, when a guy is fresh, he's coming off, a defensive series, so he's fresh, he's explosive, he runs, and then you pull him off and hand it to someone else. Ride the hot hand. Isn't that them to their strengths? And Phil was hot. There were so many questionable things today.
Phil finishes the game with 14 carries for 59 yards. What's the average there?
4.2. But
Yep.
Royce was at a 3.3.
So, again, you want to ride the hot hand. You're right. The point of committee is you ride the hot hand. And what?
Good. I feel good. How do you feel? And it's weird.
As the we're driving, so at the end of the game, I found myself.
Is it because what I said about John? If the Broncos win, they're 3-5. They're right back in this thing.
It's 1,000%. Not because you just said that, but because of what I read in Cliss's story. Building where they can see the path to 4 and 5, blah blah blah, BS, garbage. Miss at this point. This team, your offense is scoring less than 15 points per game. I mean, it was 15 going into the Chiefs game. They scored 6, 13 in this game. They're probably they probably touched their average today.
Yep. Exactly.
They're probably averaging about 13 points per game.
And what's good about that? You should be looking at changes everywhere, not just a potential rotating offensive tackles.
Yeah, but again, so I want them to let go of the hope because it's silly.
Should we do it? Sing it together. Let it go.
Oh God!
You guys have a question from the Periscope saying.
Oh yeah. By the way, producer Allie is coming in with Periscope comments.
Hello,
She's still working
everyone.
on recovery.
Drew Lock. Drew Lock to play, honestly, in my mind, as soon as possible. Like we talked about on Friday's pod, there's never. No, there's never a good time. So he needs to get in as soon as possible. The earliest, just.
The only way a win can be of value to the Broncos is if it is orchestrated by Drew Lock.
Once Drew's in, win. Keep winning.
Yeah. I mean, either way, if you win because you lose on an end of the game field goal like this, and you scored 24 points, which is damn near double their average right now, then you feel great about it. Because that's when I pointed to the part of the quote in which Joe Flacco says,
He says,
and I quote, "Getting in field goal range isn't that tough." That's a bit.
and
How many?
3.
3 times.
Field goal range. We're not talking about red zone. We're not talking about in the end zone. Right now, the Niners are playing. There's 5 left in the quarter. First half, they have 27 points. That means they've got in the end zone 3 times, and they've had 2 field goals. If
ZJ Castro, I believe it was. I understand where you're coming from. He certainly is the problem, but I think it's it can actually be both ways. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Joe Flacco can be bad, and the decision making on Twitter right now.
And understandably so.
Is Rich Gangarello, got to get rid of him, move on, blah, blah, blah. And again, I get that. The decisions that Joe Flacco specifically is frustrated with here are Vic Fangio decisions. Rich Gangarello is not the one who says run the clock out at the end of the half. And Rich Gangarello is not the one who decides run or pass on 3rd and 5 at the end.
Exactly. Those are big decisions. Those are big boy. Vic with Rich Scangarello, that now and point the finger at Rich Scangarello. That's Vic.
Comes from Vic Fangio.
Yep.
And if it doesn't, it would be a very rare case.
And come on, Rich is a first time offensive coordinator. I would be shocked if he's getting those calls.
So Vic, while I have good.
Is it not good though?
I mean,
Because
it doesn't matter long term. Well, we hope that it doesn't matter long term because Joe Flacco is not the long term option for this team. But right now, to have so you've got a power structure in most NFL teams. The power structure would go owner.
Yep.
This is only a 3-man power structure here. You've 3 of those guys on the same page. At the very worst, or at the they need to go.
Whether it's going to another team is because he doesn't feel like he's on the exact same page with Robert Kraft and with Bill Belichick. And that's Tom Brady we're talking about.
And that goes against everything I just said, that you can't have success without that. But that's okay.
But I'm saying he wants to move on from a situation like that.
Right, but what I'm saying is they've had the most success of any NFL franchise ever over the last, 20 years or whatever. So
When you're that good, it's okay.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Yeah, this is, for me, in the short term, have your quarterback. I don't know. Have you ever seen this? Obviously, we don't have our pulse on everything throughout the league, but I think quarterback calling out head coach or even offensive coordinators
when the Broncos lost until right about now. Not just these comments, and these comments are huge. They're very damning. Vic's going to have to respond to them tomorrow. So Rich and so that helps with everything falling apart. And then also you have completely off.
it does feel that way.
Were we on a bike, tricycle, car? What type of 18
like
wheeler?
how many wheels were there in the first
how many
place?
were there?
I think it was like it was a
Unicycle?
unicycle.
Oh, could you imagine the wheel falling off of a unicycle?
I've seen an influx of just humans using unicycles over the last year or so.
Let me.
It's just taking a while because it's a long trip on a unicycle. Could be. What? Please tell me what is gained from riding a unicycle?
Especially.
Is it a flex?
Oh, definitely, absolutely. But you go slower. You look wobblier. You, especially the ones where you're like 15 feet off.
Well, now you're talking about like a circuit.
But when you said unicycle in Boulder, that's the only thing I can picture.
Oh, like on Pearl Street, someone's like flaming thing. No, I'm talking about just like casual.
Yeah, not yet.
It's a trend.
And then imagine when their wheels fall off, what it'll look like.
The wheel.
The
wheel has fallen off. All right. Well, if your wheel. Brewery, the best beers in the world, in my opinion, and we talk a lot about different beers, and a lot of people think like, oh, as you go into the winter, you got to get away from some of those summer beers. I generally, I'm just like a summer beer all the time type of person.
Absolutely.
So for me, Strawberry Sky season has not even come close to an end. It's all year round.
Ryan, we have some winter weather right now. I mean, we may be doing this podcast for a couple straight because we may. Fifth grade.
Oh, I do remember that one.
You're snowed in.
But like by choice.
What do you mean? Oh, because it was convenient not to leave.
Right. You're like, well, yeah, all right, I'm snowed in. I can't go to school.
So I think you're jinxing here. I think
I
we're
will
go out and
I will
snowed in.
Guarantee you, I will eat my shoe for dinner if we're snowed in here tonight. And there's probably good Hot Pockets in the freezer.
And I will not eat a shoe that goes the other way.
Your shoe. Okay, you mentioned something there, and we will get in the locker room and the potential of this being their last game together. Von Miller went into tears, real tears.
Mm-hmm.
Does he know, or is he just in an emotional state because he missed the play at the game?
From an emotional standpoint, it has been very odd. Especially, I mean, he did get on the sack board today. He's now Sanders trade. He said, we're not in a very good place right now, and I want people here that want to be Broncos. Now, I don't think that he views Chris in the same light as Emmanuel in terms of not wanting to be a Bronco, but I think that he understands everything that's out there, and he knows that Derrick Wolfe and Chris Harris Jr. could be on the move.
Pressure.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to trade him, I'm sure there's a team out there that would take him. And Chris, I mean, I almost sent off a tweet. I ended up not sending it, but I was about to tweet in the first half of the game. It's weird that T.Y. Hilton wasn't on the injury report yet. He's not playing. And then right after that, he had like an 18-yard catch on 1st and 20. But still, Chris Harris buried him for most of the game. Only time
Two catches.
Yep. very easy for Von Miller standards. Probably game-winning sack.
And you know who else was there? Was Derrick Wolfe.
Yep.
He was right there. The two got tangled together. Man, that play was brutal. You get that, game's over. Even if it's not a safety, game's over.
Yeah, I think so too. When it wasn't going to be a safety ground out
Right.
in front of the goal line there. But you're talking about then 1st and 18. The clock is ticking. There's no timeouts.
You're on the other side of the 50. They have.
One can cover T.Y. Hilton for that long.
No, you can't. His trade value has to.
I just don't think I really don't think it's possible. But he actually played a good game, a really good game actually.
He did.
I'm sure when Andre's grades come in this week, he'll be an A- or a B+.
And for the most part, that's how Von's played. He does not have the sack numbers, but he's getting in the backfield. He was there multiple times today. Of course, got the half sack. Very, very stout in the run game. I think for John Elway Miller, he would have to be blown out of the water. And I just don't think it's going to happen for a guy that's in his 30s.
And, has a ton of money on his contract. It's dead money for the Broncos. On top of that, there's a lot of, things that knock down the possibility of that. But
Over 50%, 70%. That he's trading in the next few days?
why would John Elway say on our conference call the other day that no one has called about Chris Harris Jr. lately? Wouldn't you want the narrative to be that everyone is calling it about Chris?
Call.
Yes, it was.
It was interesting. And I have no idea. Yeah, wouldn't you want it to seem like there was a lot of interest?
I would think so.
Unless for some reason you're trying to convince Chris already, right now. There's no interest for you. Don't even bother talking to other teams once free agency comes around.
That's the best case I've heard yet. That's the only thing I've heard that makes sense.
Yeah. And how about
And
this?
we can only hope that I don't know. Like, either way, it was dumb.
If you get a second-round pick for Chris, are you taking it?
In a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat. Yep, I'm not hanging up the phone until that deal's done. Third?
Yep.
Fourth?
No.
So that's where it is. Day 2 pick.
Yep.
Just give me something.
You could make the case. The trade value chart will tell you that a fourth this year it will be the same value over time as a third next year, and the end of the third next year. But just for what's the word? Optics. I don't think you can trade Chris Harris for a 4th-round pick.
I don't think you can either. You have to get at least the value of Emmanuel Sanders. And that's what's encouraging about getting that day 2 value is I think Chris is worth more than Emmanuel right now to a team, and you just got a 3rd and a 4th for him. And in the locker room, Chris was asked about all the trade chatter, and he said, I'm not going to lie to you. It was the hardest week for me to focus. It was hard to play the game, but I got through it and thought I played solid. Sounds like a guy that thinks he's out the door.
Yeah, and there was one team that if you want the Broncos to make a trade that you were rooting for today, and they're a team that I root for every week. And it was the Eagles. They're the team that is competing for a division title. They have a lot of holes, but they went out and beat a really good Bills team on the road today, and they're probably feeling really good about themselves right now.
Yep, it's a really good point. When would you expect a trade to happen?
Right around the deadline.
Me too as well, on Tuesday, early afternoon.
Yep, that's probably when it will happen because if you're John Elway, one of your weapons is the deadline itself. Right now they can call and offer you a 3rd, and you can say, it's gonna take. Let me see what else is out there, and I'll get back to you guys. Well, if there's 20 minutes left until the deadline, you say, look, guys, your options are you get him for a 2nd or you don't get him at all.
Exactly. So if you are struggling wrapping your mind around all of this, make sure you check out the Green Solution, which has 17 Colorado locations and an express checkout to get you in and out as fast as possible. Get on your phone right now, go to their website, mygreensolution.com, order your flower, concentrates, edibles, and topicals online, and head to the closest Green Solution for pickup and use the code DNVR20 for 20% off your entire purchase. That's DNVR20 at the Green Solution. And
in the problem that is the Broncos having to figure out what to do with Chris Harris, the Eagles are the Green Solution. All right, we got any more questions over there, Allie? All right, no questions to get to. So,
Ryan, we talk about Drew Lock, and I'm sure we'll talk about Drew Lock every single day this week, and we'll probably be talking about how frustrating it is not seeing him out there on the practice field. But there's one thing that happened today that could be legitimate reason to bring Drew Lock back. And not just legitimate reason to us, because we have plenty of legitimate reasons already, but to John Elway and to Vic Fangio. And that's because he just flat out may be needed. And Joe Flacco, boy, you never want to see any player getting their headlight cranked off mid-game by a chiropractor, but especially your starting quarterback, right?
Yeah, that was odd. I wonder if that person charged him like $50 and told him that like his anxiety was because he had like his fourth metatarsal, whatever, like out of place. But it was weird that he was getting chiropractic work on the sideline during the game. He said, it's been sore for him for a week or so now.
He's been dealing with a strain in his neck for a couple of weeks.
Maybe that's why he's not seeing the field so well. Can't turn, You ever wake up and you can't really turn your head one way?
Maybe he needs Strava Craft Cop. Well, he'd probably get in trouble for CBD.
No CBD, no THC, but there are some concerns by some players. Some players just say F it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have someone who's saying, why would we trade Harris? That's lunatic. Or Vaughn.
Well, because you're not going to keep him.
Right. The reason would be, do you believe that these guys will be on your team by the next time you're contending? And John Elway, he can't see a full rebuild. So he can't say I can't see Vaughn in my plans next time we're competing, because Vaughn still has 2 years left on his deal. So John with Vaughn says, yes, Vaughn's going to be with us when we're competing next. But Chris, his contract's done after this year, and Chris is going to go get paid. And John knows exactly how far off the Broncos and Chris Harris Jr. are in long-term contract extensions. So if you can go get something for him, instead of just have him play on a 2-6 football team for 8 more weeks before saying goodbye, you do that.
Yeah, I understand from a fan perspective why it would be really hard to see Chris Harris Jr. go. But the question is, would you like to have a third-round pick in this year's draft to maybe replenish your cornerback room, or would you like to have a third-round compensatory pick in not this year's draft, the next year's draft after that? And that's assuming that you don't sign very many free agents, because everyone in these discussions always just assumes, if they go, it's a compensatory pick. No. It matters on who goes versus who comes. So if you want the Broncos to sign good free agents, and you want the Broncos to have a third-round pick next year, then it's a no-brainer for you to trade Chris. If you're just hoping the Broncos go 6-10 instead of 4-12 this year, well then yes, you don't want to trade him. But
what are you doing if you're trying to win anymore this year? What are you doing? Now, I understand if you trade Chris, the cornerback depth is going to be scary. It's going to be a very scary place to be. But
who cares?
Exactly.
In the words of Joe Flacco 2 different times after today's game, who cares? He was using it in a different context, but I'm using it in this one. It's a lost season. It's a lost season. This is we've never even been in this position. We've never, usually at this point what were they last year? Through 8.
They were 3-6, so they were 3-5 through 8.
Okay, so this is it feels way worse. It's only a little bit worse than they were off last year, and
at 3-5, John thought they were still in it,
and technically they were. Who knows what was going to happen if Chris and Emmanuel didn't get hurt?
It's
and now you might just willingly take them off the roster.
Yep, exactly. And Ryan, You said we're kind of in uncharted territory. Well, we're in very uncharted territory. What? We talked last year about how it was going to be the first time in 4 decades that the Broncos had back-to-back losing seasons. Well, now they're looking at back-to-back-to-back losing seasons, and it's the second time, or it's only the third time in the past 36 years the Broncos have started 2-6.
Not one. Just kidding. Yeah, it's ugly, and for the 1,000th time that we've said this, they have to embrace the rebuild, and that starts over the next 2 days. You gotta look yourself in the mirror if you're John Elway and say, am I trying to win a few more games this year, or am I trying to win more games next year? Like, that's my hope here, is that John Elway, I know that he thinks they can turn this thing around in one season. He always feels that way. So my hope is that he thinks, okay, well, for me to be able to do that as best as I can, I need to accumulate draft capital for next season.
Right.
Because this isn't talking about trading Von Miller, who will be here next year if you don't sign him. This is talking about trading guys who will not be here. Chris Harris, let's try to remember where we were during these Chris Harris Jr. negotiations in which John Elway inexplicably just handed him a bunch of money. The idea was that this is the last year. Mm-hmm. Everyone felt that way. Mm-hmm. And so you're not going to have him, by all accounts. There's no reason to hang on to him for the rest of this year.
Exactly. So, Ryan, you will very likely be playing the 2-5 Cleveland Browns at home next week. Probably a lot of brown. Or orange.
Yeah, it's going to blend in.
In the stands. So, yeah, it may blend in a little bit for the Broncos' benefit. But if you lose that game, then you're 2-7 going into your bye week. But you'll be too late to make these moves. You have to make these moves by Tuesday. So who will not be on the field for the Broncos next week that was on the field for them this week?
I think it's probably just going to end up being just Chris. Because I don't feel the same way about Derrick Wolfe, that it's over for him in Denver. I actually think he would sell you could sell him a 3-year, $10 million deal, and he'll stick around.
Do you think because Derrick wants to be in Denver so bad and wants to retire a Bronco so bad, and after the game he said, I maintain I want to retire a Bronco, but I also want to win. So kind of he's opening the door to being welcome to being traded, but also saying he's okay if he stays. What do you think of trading him, getting a 4th-round pick back, which I never thought I was going to say.
Love this take.
And his contract's done after this year. So then you say, Derrick, come back. Come join us. Here's that same, you know what, we'll do $3 million or 3 years, $11 million now.
Great take. I've always wondered why the teams don't do this more.
Yeah.
Have a little under-the-table agreement.
Yep.
Say, hey, Derrick, we're going to let you go chase a ring this year. Just come back for us next year.
And that's how you phrase it to him. We want you to win this year, man.
Yep. The problem is, if you have a girl who you like quite a bit, and you know that you want to ask her to marry you, are you going to, maybe, I don't know.
Do you have some issues going on that you need to let her go win for a while?
That's what I'm saying is you're having some problems with the relationship. Instead of seeking therapy, you just say, hey, why don't you go date another guy for 3 months? Just come back afterwards. And you know that you're imperfect. Right. Are you taking the risk that she really loves that other guy?
Absolutely not. No way.
Ryan, I thought you would go for the bachelorette analysis there.
How bring it in.
Go let your girl or your guy go on the Bachelor for the season, see the publicity, what he or she could do. Knowing you, I thought that's where you were going with that.
That's a good one. And
we've seen that unfold.
We have.
Well, and here's the other one that you could bring it back to the Bachelor. When they kind of have a thing with someone, and then they always ask, like, how would you feel if I got asked on the date when the new person comes in? And sometimes they're like, oh, you should do it. And that's the sign of, like, I don't think this is going anywhere. If you want Derrick Wolfe back, I don't know if you want to take the risk that he goes and gets to taste winning again and says, oh, God, I never want to go back there again.
So then if you're John Elway, you have to say, what's more important to me? Derrick Wolfe for the next 3 years on a good deal or a 4th-round pick?
Yeah, and that's it's a tougher decision. Just as much as better trade value today, it also makes it a tougher decision for John. Derrick Wolfe's playing the best football over the last few weeks that he has probably since the Super Bowl run.
Yep.
So that makes it a lot harder.
So John has to decide, does he want to get married or does he want to go have some fun?
We have some Periscope questions.
Okay, what do we got?
All right. Michael B. from Broncos Euro says, do you guys not think that Flacco's restructure on his contract was unacceptable? Very poor management decisions. They won't embrace rebuild.
Great question. And here is the thing that is being missed in this whole Joe Flacco situation. By opening up $13 million of cap space this year and then adding $13 million guaranteed next year, the Broncos did give themselves flexibility to make a move. Now, as they have become sellers and the season has gone awry, maybe they don't make that move. It still could be used for such a thing as like re-signing Justin Simmons. But let's just live in a world where they do nothing with the money. And on the surface, that sounds infuriating. They just gave Joe Flacco $13 million guaranteed next year and did nothing with it.
Yep.
If that happens, it's like it never happened.
Right,
because the Broncos roll over that $13 million into their cap next year, and you just use it to cancel out the guarantees if you wanted to move on from Joe Flacco. It feels different. It feels like there was some exchange there, or you gave $13 million guaranteed that you didn't have to. When all reality, it's a complete wash, and it never happened.
Because the money that you saved this year and that you owe him next year, you just roll that savings into next year, and then the dead money that he has is covered up by the savings that you rolled into next year. That's how it's a wash. It's just, it looks bad because a lot of fans, and pretty much everyone, thinks that the Broncos made a terrible decision by doing that. Not necessarily. It just looks bad, and then it'll look really bad on the dead cap money if they cut him next year, because they're really close to leading the league in dead cap. That's only going to add to that.
Yeah, but it's funny because it looks like a terrible move when in reality it's actually kind of a secret genius move.
Right. I mean, especially if you do sign a good player up for the long term.
Right, and then it'll actually go back to being a bad move in the eyes of the people, because then you actually will have to pay him that money next year that didn't roll over.
Yep.
But in the end, it's not as bad as it looks.
Yep.
All right, we got one more from Pinfall Wrap Up. He says, do you think Elway might bring in Shanahan for help with his GM duties? Shanahan had a history of good drafts. 2006 was probably his best one.
No. One, Mike Shanahan, that GM, was the downfall of Mike Shanahan, the head coach in Denver. I mean, I think John actually really wanted him to be his head coach. I definitely don't think he wants him as a GM. GM help on the table would be interesting. I have a hard time imagining John Elway giving up power, but I would be intrigued by the Adam Peters idea, which we've talked about before.
I would too. If you bring in a Mike Shanahan, he's your GM. He's making decisions, and I don't see John Elway staying with the organization but giving up that power.
Why would John Elway invite arguments and that sort of thing into his life?
And here's the thing is, people may say, well, something needs to change with the front office. And yeah, something probably will change, but instead of him taking the blame on himself, he's going to say, no, Matt Russell, I'm moving on from you, or some other guys in his inner circle, I'm moving on from you, because then, without saying it, John's saying, guys, it was their problem, not mine, and I am doing something to change this, because you're right, 4-12 isn't good enough, but it was his fault.
Anything else?
Nope.
Here's a tweet from our guy Zach By. He says, make sure you're sitting down for this one, Broncos country. The Broncos have now gone more than a full season, 17 games, and a full calendar year without scoring more than 24 points in a football game. Nearly half of the NFL averages 24 points or more a game. Remember, Zach, we are in whatever the opposite of the dead ball era is.
Yep.
That's what the live ball era.
Yep.
We are in the era of offense. All of the rules are slanted towards the offense. Teams are putting up ridiculous numbers every week. It's supposed to be easy for the offense, and the Broncos have now gone more than a whole season of games without scoring more than 24 points.
So you know what is just so offensive about that is that the Broncos got to 13 points, and they said, we good. We did it. We did it. We eclipsed half of what we haven't done yet.
You know what makes that 13-point number magical, though?
Because we're geniuses.
It's actually, like, if we were trying to get it right, it's actually stupid that all of us chose the exact same number for the Broncos to score this week, yet you, Mace, and I each predicted the Broncos to score exactly 13 points this week. That sometimes we know what we're talking about.
Next week, how can you predict the Broncos to score more than 13 points? And after the Broncos scored 6 points last week, and after they traded their best player on offense, I thought, I'm stupid for picking them to choose to score more than 6 points. How can I do that? And then I thought, well, come on. I mean, 13. We've got to score 13, right? But nothing more. How can we predict them to score more than 13 next week?
I don't know. I mean, the Browns aren't as good as either of these last two teams that they've played, but yeah, I mean,
true.
Remember last year after you took Emmanuel Sanders out of the offense, they became anemic, completely and utterly anemic. Today actually felt better than some of those games, and they scored 13 points. So that'll be something to keep an eye on for sure.
Fry Jared says, do you all agree with Flacco on not being aggressive?
Yeah, we kind of got to that early in the show, but yeah, of course. I mean, what do you have to lose? Absolutely nothing.
Especially when your second half, you score a touchdown, but then you go 6 straight punts. Okay, 5 straight punts and a strip sack fumble to end the game.
Crazy.
I mean, it's not like what you were doing being conservative was working.
No. And again, that Cortland Sutton matchup, that's the one that they should lose sleep over tonight. Yep. I'm not losing sleep over it. But people who are in charge of this should be losing sleep over the fact that they got Cortland Sutton 3 catches in a game where the dude guarding him couldn't hold his jock.
Worst case, you throw the ball up to him, and Rocky Sin just has another penalty.
Right.
And so maybe it's not Cortland getting on the stat sheet, but you're getting the yards regardless.
They should have kept going to him until Rocky Sin could defend it without it being a drop or a penalty.
Until he would have stopped sinning.
Yep. Anything else? All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for what are you trying to tell me, Zach?
Another segment.
For the segment. Yeah. That's what
I
thought you were telling me I was going crazy or something. Shout out to Drift Car Sharing, who can help you make some money while you're traveling. It's a pretty sweet setup. You take your car, you park for free at the airport. While you're gone, they rent your car out, and you make money off of that. Then, when you come back, they give you a full cleaning. It was insured by Allstate the whole time, so you came back with more money, a cleaner car, and you parked for free. It's a perfect scenario. So check out drivedrift.com. That is drivedrift.com.
Sounds pretty darn good. And what else was pretty darn good was the defense. They were pretty darn good through most of the game, Ryan, up until the final drive of the first half when the Colts went down and got a field goal. The Broncos defense have given up 78 yards of offense pretty much in a full half. Now, they ended the half giving up 130 yards of offense to the Colts, and they only held them to 15 points. You should win 95% of the games that you hold the team to 15 points.
Yeah. But, I mean, even Vic Fangio said after the game something along the lines of, we don't score very many points. Like, you should, but things are different in the world of the Broncos.
Yeah.
Like, they're up 6-0 towards the end of the first half. They have dominated the first half. Yep. And yet, they were a touchdown away from being down. You know? Like, look at the 49ers right now. They dominated the first half. They're up 27-11, and it's only 11 because the 49ers just scored, or the Panthers just scored here in the third quarter. So they went in 27-3, or something like 27-6, something along those lines. That's what you're supposed to do when you dominate. But their offense is so bad that they can never blow a team out. They can never capitalize on the fact that their defense is putting the absolute clamps. They were hardly out there, the Colts offense. And Brissett was completely out of rhythm. He never had a chance to get into rhythm because he was never on the field. They couldn't get anything going. But when you don't step on a team's throat, You're just inviting them to have one drive that gets it going for them, and that's what happened.
Do you think this could be a reason why John says, you know what, I know we're not winning this year, but look at how good the defense is looking, and Vic's defense is coming together, so you know what, I will go pay Chris Harris at the end of this season. I'm going to lock up Derrick Wolfe after this season at a fair price, and Von Miller, no way is he not part of our future plans. So you know what? We're not going to trade any of these guys. We're going to keep them all here because this defense is starting to become the defense that I envisioned when I hired Vic Fangio.
That's fine with me, honestly. But it all is contingent on Chris Harris Jr. If you can get Chris, then I'm fine with, proverbially kicking the can down the road with this defense because they are still really good. You have a winning defense. Like, very unequivocally, you have a winning defense. If you had I'm going to find the lowest possible word I can use here. And I think respectable is too good.
Okay.
If you had a offense that was less than awful, just slightly less than awful, you have a winning team right now.
Yeah.
So I can get behind that. But it all hinges on Chris, and I don't think Chris wants to come back.
Yeah, I don't either. And the question would be, would you be willing to pay him $15 million for 3 years? Would that get it done? 15 for
45?
Yep.
Oh, God, that's so much money.
Would you do it? Knowing where this team is at, finishing right now, Ryan, they are on pace. Cover your ears, Broncos fans. They're on pace to finish 4-12.
Worse than the Vance Joseph era.
Yep.
It's really hard to wrap my head around this because there are teams that can turn things around quickly. I think the Broncos are further away from that. I think it's a 2-year process if they embrace it, which means that you'd be pulling for the last year of Chris's deal being the year that it all comes together. I think it's worth it to have a player that's that good. But remember, if history tells us anything, that last year, which would probably be the first year that you have a real chance of contending again, if you did everything right on that way, it would also be the year that Chris is at his worst because he's at his oldest.
Right.
So when you mix all of that stuff together, it just seems to make sense that I don't think Chris is going to re-sign here anyway. I don't think they're going to pay him what he thinks he deserves, which he will get on the open market from a team that is competing, such as the Colts.
Yep. Who
just watched their young corner without their main corner get abused today by a guy who struggled to be a number one receiver last year. And they have all sorts of cap space. Someone out there is going to give him the money that he believes he deserves. I don't think it's going to be the Broncos. And for that reason, I think you're best off trading him. If you could do this deal, I'll probably say keep the good player on the team. But the deal seems far-fetched in the first place.
And you can't do the deal in the middle of the season. That's something that they negotiated when they gave him the $3 million.
Why was there a negotiation in a gift?
Someone gives you a gift, and you're like, whoa, let's talk about this. Are you sure that's all you want to give me?
Unbelievable. Have we ever even gotten an answer from John Elway on what the point of that was?
No.
I need to remind myself to ask that at the next opportunity.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
It is, and that's where the Broncos are. And Ryan, I think what's important is to say when we talk about all this trade stuff, especially for fans, because they get emotional and they don't want to see Von Miller leave. They don't want to see Emmanuel Sanders leave. They don't want to see Chris leave.
Understandably.
Exactly, very understandably, because they love him. And when we say all of this about, just get rid of him, trade him, get a second-round pick back, it's with the understanding that Chris Harris Jr., he's coming back here right after he retires, and he's going up in the Ring of Fame. He's an all-time great Bronco, and he leaves on good terms with the Broncos. He's happy because the Broncos aren't sending him to Miami for a second-round pick. They're sending him to New England. They're sending him to San Francisco. They're sending him to a winning team, and so he's happy by that, and he'll love to come back when he's retired. He's won a Super Bowl here. He's done so many great things with the Broncos. So it's a good thing because it also helps the Broncos win in the future and get away from 4-12.
I say this at the risk of you singing something. Isn't there a song lyric? If you love me, let me go.
I'm sure there is. I wish I knew the song, or I'd be singing right now.
I think that's a song lyric. Maybe it's a poem.
Love me, let me go.
That's the one. It had like an 80s ballad feel to it. I like that. So that's the thing.
Was that actually it?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't either.
But like, here's the thing. I bet Emmanuel Sanders is having a great day today. He's feeling really good today. He already has a touchdown catch. His team's rolling. You should want that for those players you love.
Right about it. As much as you want it, it just puts a knot in your stomach, twists the knife when you find out that Emmanuel Sanders scored his first touchdown with the 49ers on their first possession. So he's being used a lot. They're having success. He's happy. Right at the same time, Joe Flacco was strip sacked, and the game was over.
I thought this really was going to be turned on its head when Joe Flacco was injured there. I thought that's what was going to happen.
It turned on its head.
Yes. So I was like, oh, God, here we go. We're going to have to see Brandon Allen next week.
Yep.
All right, I've got a question for you guys. Zach Ann Horn says, who do you see the Broncos drafting? Justin Herbert, offensive line, or an explosive receiver?
Oh, better not be a receiver. Although they could certainly use it when, was it Fred Brown is your number 2 receiver this week?
Yeah, I think receiver is very much on the table. The thing about receiver is this class is stacked.
Laviska Shenault, Ryan?
I mean, what's crazy is that there was a scout quoted this week giving him a 3rd-round grade, Laviska, because of the injuries.
Wow.
So if you and let me just say this. I'll take him in this. If Laviska Shenault is there for you in the 2nd round and you don't take him, you're idiotic. So what my point is here, though, is there is so much wide receiver talent that you could probably get a really good player. You could have had Terry McLaurin in the 3rd last year, and that wasn't even a stacked wide receiver class. Probably get a really good player in the 2nd. As for the quarterbacks, I want to talk a lot about this week because I did my homework on Joe Burrow, and I watched all. That's why I'm excited to have this conversation because he did look good, but there's a big caveat to why he looked good. I watched all of them. I watched Hurts. I watched Herbert. I watched Burrow. Who else is up there? Tua didn't play, which you would never know from looking at the scoreboard. Who else is in that conversation? Who am I forgetting?
I mean, those are the big ones.
Okay, well, I watched all of them, and I have a take that I will debut this week.
I can't wait to hear it. I have a feeling I know where it's going.
Yeah, you probably do. So I don't know. I don't think I can't. I'm gonna spoil my take.
Stop.
Anyways, I think there's a lot of places the Broncos could go. This is why we need to see Drew Lock.
We have to, and we can't answer this question right now because there's a 100% answer for you. If Drew Lock's not the guy, quarterback 100%. Don't even look at any other positions. All of your scouts should be focused on just quarterbacks. If Drew Lock is the guy, then of those 3 options that you presented, Zach, I like offensive tackle.
I thought you were talking to yourself for a second.
I like offensive tackle right now because, Ryan, why don't you just do the same for me that you did last year, but instead of going defensive line in the 1st round, go offensive line in the 1st round, then wide receiver in the 2nd. How's that looking right now?
Looks good.
It does.
Except for Noah Fant is kind of struggling to get involved.
Not 2 years ago.
Okay.
With going Bradley Chubb and Courtland Sutton.
Yeah. I think, yeah, exactly. 2nd round wide receivers can be really successful. I would keep that in mind. There's so much talent. It's absurd.
Yep. So if you can get a 98 wide receiver in the 1st round, or you can get a 93 in the 2nd round, but you can get a 98 offensive lineman in the 1st round to pair with that 93 in the 2nd round, I do that in a heartbeat.
Any more questions?
Nope.
All right. Stay tuned this week for my grand quarterback take that I believe in wholeheartedly after watching all these guys for multiple times at Joe Burrow for the first time. Thanks for tuning in with us on the live stream tonight. A weird time to be a Broncos fan, and I sympathize with you guys because there's not like a right answer to anything that's going on right now. But keep riding with us because we'll keep having fun with it regardless of what happens, and we will talk to you tomorrow.